Hello everyone, and welcome once again to Caleb Likes Books. Today I am bringing you another book review, and today I am going to be talking about a Discworld book, and that is Mort by Terry Pratchett. So Mort is one of the many Discworld books. There's somewhere around 40 of them, I believe. And Discworld is split into multiple sub-series, and Mort is the first book of the Death series, which focuses on the character of Death within Discworld. I believe it's a 5-book series. I have the second book as well, which I'll probably be rereading sometime within the next few months. I have read one Discworld book before. I read Small Gods last year, and I reviewed it on the channel, I believe. I can't remember when exactly I read it, but I really enjoyed it. It was a really fun read, very funny and all that stuff. And I enjoyed it a lot, so I was really looking forward to reading this one, and I don't know that I enjoyed this one maybe as much as Small Gods, but I did still really enjoy it a lot. So of course, to start out with some positives for Mort, first of all, the thing that a lot of people know about Discworld is its humor. Discworld is kind of a satirical fantasy sort of book series, kind of more, comedic, lots of little jokes and things like that. And this book is full of those, and I loved it. I loved the humor in this book. It's one of those, I think Small Gods was the same way, where maybe not every single page was like this, but a lot of the book was like every few lines or maybe every other paragraph or something like that, there'd be like a little joke in there that would get a laugh out of me. In the first few pages, I had laughed out loud multiple times, and that was kind of consistent throughout the entire book. So this is a very funny book. I really enjoyed the comedy in it a lot. Very clever comedy, lots of fun little, jokes and things like that. Especially in the dialogue, there's a lot of dialogue comedy, and then there's also more narrator comedy where, the narrator of the story, which as far as I'm aware, there isn't a narrator specifically, but, the narration part of the story may have some jokes, or it may be within the dialogue or things like that. And it's all done really well. I also really enjoyed the characters and the plot in this book. They were both very strong. I think to compare this to Small Gods, for example, I loved the characters in Small Gods, and I can't remember if I talked about really liking the plot in my review, but looking back on it, I don't really remember the plot that much. So I would say the characters stuck with me for that book a lot better, whereas I think in Mort, I think the plot and the characters were both really good. The plot of this book, basically the setup, which is a wonderful setup, is you have Death, who is Death. Obviously, he's, the kind of typical Grim Reaper type character who, when you die, he comes and he takes you into whatever it is that comes after life. And in this book, he is looking for an assistant. And it just so happens that this character named Mort, or I believe Mortimer is his full name, he is looking for a job, and Death's like, hey, you should be my apprentice, or something like that. And he basically recruits Mort to be his apprentice and study under him and learn how to kind of do the whole death thing. And by the way, something that I love, which I assume this was intentional, I studied French in high school, and Mort is actually the word for death or something. It's death or dead or something like that. I can't remember the exact word, but that's what it means in French. So I like that was the name of the character. So that's kind of the setup of the plot. And then of course, Mort's learning all these things and studying under Death and all this stuff. And then he ends up being sent out by himself to do the whole death thing, go out and collect the souls and bring them to, the afterlife or whatever. And things don't go quite as planned. And it leads to some very interesting situations that are a lot of fun, which I really enjoyed. So the plot, I love the setup. I love most of the plot, which I'll talk a little bit about more when I talk negatives, which there's really not much for negatives, but That's the one thing, really. But I loved most of the plot in this book. I loved the setup of it. I love the kind of idea of, Death having an apprentice who then kind of tries to do the whole thing that Death does and then inevitably messes it up. I love the characters. Mort and Death in this book both are wonderful protagonists. Death doesn't appear in this book as much as I expected. This is very much Mort's story, which you can kind of guess based on the title. It's very much his book, and Death does appear in it, quite a bit, but it's not as focused on him as I expected. I'm wondering if he'll be more of a central character in the upcoming books, but he wasn't in this as much as I expected, which at first was a little disappointing, but really I didn't mind it because Mort was also a wonderful character. And there's some side characters in this as well, like Death's adopted daughter and the other person that works with him named Albert. They're fun characters. There's a few other ones that are okay as well. I didn't find any of the side characters as memorable as Mort and Death personally, but they were all really good. And that just about does it for positives, which sounds like not a lot, but really like the entirety mostly of this book I really enjoyed. So, just apply those positives across the entire book. As far as negatives, the only thing really for me is, like I said earlier, I enjoyed most of the plot quite a bit. I do think towards the end it did lose me a little. I think that's mostly because for the vast majority of the book, it's focused primarily on Mort, and then also Death and all these other side characters and their interactions with Mort and all that stuff. Towards the end, it kind of shifts focus a little bit to look more at some of the other characters, and I think that lost me a little bit. I couldn't entirely follow what was going on because it shifted focus a bit, and it kind of made me lose interest a little. But I did still enjoy, the stuff with Mort and Death, towards the end of the book. That was all really good. But certain parts of the plot did kind of lose me towards the end, which wasn't a huge issue because this is a super short book. It's under 300 pages. So really it was like the last 50 to 70 pages that, granted that's a good chunk of the book, but there was parts in there that I wasn't as into, but the rest of the book was fantastic. So overall, I really enjoyed this one a lot. Again, I don't know if I would say I liked it as much as Small Gods. I think it's probably an overall more solid book, considering that I really enjoyed the plot in this one and all that stuff. Although I think it was kind of the same way with Small Gods, where, I enjoyed the plot for quite a while and then it kind of lost me towards the end. So I'm curious if that's going to end up being a theme with Discworld, now that that's happened with 2 books that I've read of it. But I really enjoyed this one a lot. It was super funny, super charming. It was just a lot of fun to read. I had a really good time with it. And so as far as the score out of 10 that I would give Mort, I would give it an 8.5 out of 10. So definitely one that I really enjoyed. Again, the plot stuff towards the end kind of brings it down a little bit for me. Plus it's, not quite on the level for me of like a 10 out of 10 in terms of plot or characters. Certainly in terms of writing style and humor, I absolutely loved. But the other stuff was really good, but it wasn't quite on that kind of 10 out of 10 level. But it was a very, very enjoyable book, and I would highly recommend checking it out. But anyways, that is pretty much it for the review. So let me know down in the comments if you have read Mort, or if you are planning to, if you've read any other Discworld books, any of that stuff. I am definitely looking forward to reading some more. I really enjoyed Small Gods. I really enjoyed this one. I have the second Death book. I believe it's called Reaper Man, currently in my collection, so I can read that whenever I would like to. And I will definitely be finishing up the Death series. I'm hoping I can finish it by the end of the year, because I think one of my goals that I set out with for the beginning of the year was to finish a Discworld series, because I really wanted to do that. And considering that I have the first 2 Death books out of 5, that seems like a pretty manageable goal if I can get my hands on the last 3. So, yeah, let me know down in the comments if you've read this and what you thought of it and all those things. And that is pretty much it for this video. So thank you for watching, and I will see you guys next time.